Welcome, everyone, to the C-Suite Sales and Marketing Perspectives podcast. I'm Steve McDonald, your host. Today, we have an excellent guest, Wendy White. You've been involved in companies that were from Series A to just sub-$1 billion in sales. And you love to talk about this, which is you started out early in your career as a propagandist for the military. I'm going to let you expand on that and tell us a little bit more about your background.
Okay. All right. Just to date myself, I have been a CMO 4 times over the last about 14 years. Been doing B2B tech related stuff since college. But before college and then during the early part of my career, I was a military intelligence officer specializing in psychological operations, which is essentially propaganda development. It's where I started my career, learning how to do audience analysis and what we called psychological preparation of the battlefield.
And how well that translated over to marketing, right?
It absolutely was essentially marketing. It was thinking about the military's objective and how to use communications vehicles like radio, TV, leaflets, loudspeakers to influence either what was happening with the enemy or what was happening on the ground in the territory that armies would have to move through.
Now, that could be a whole nother podcast.
It could be. It could be fascinating, right?
Yes, absolutely. But what we want to talk about today is something that as CMO, we all are affected by, which is why do we fail so quickly? We had the shortest tenure in the C-suite. Why is that? Why, as a C-suite, part of the leadership of the company, why is the finger pointing our way? Why are we the fall guy? And we want to unpack that today. You've got tons and tons of insights from your travels and your experiences. So I'd love to just start out and turn it over to you, as there's many reasons why. There's not one. But start us out with what you think is some of the biggest reasons why B2B CMOs fail so quickly.
I think there is so many underlying causes of this problem, but it probably starts off at that pinnacle mismatch between what does the board and the CEO think they want? What kind of CMO do they think they're hiring versus what kind of CMO did they get? Or what kind of listening did the CMO do to that and interpret that? And then how are they managing their first 90 days, 6 months, 1 year on the job? If the average tenure is 18 months, you can guarantee by the end of that first 6 months, that CMO has probably already failed.
Yeah, it's what you're talking about. It just comes down to what are the expectations from both sides?
Right? It is expectations. And I think a lot of that is you fail even before you take the job, right? It happens during the CMO's due diligence, right? I always equate interviewing for a job as dating, right? The dating, you're discovering all those things through that due diligence. And what I have learned through doing due diligence very poorly in one example and very well in my later years, and maybe that due diligence is incredibly important to be able to make the right decision for you as a CMO on culture fit, communication style, and collaboration style with that CEO. And then also very important, like your fit into what the organizational capabilities are and how long you have to improve those organizational capabilities based on what the board and CEO expectations are.
What's my runway? What kind of budgets do I have? What kind of resources do I have? What's the belief set? Because one of the biggest things that happens is as a CMO, we come in and we're held accountable for things on two different extreme ends of the spectrum. One is very short-term pipeline development, right? The other is longer-term brand development, the expertise of the company. One 3-time B2B CMO said in the podcast, she said, tomorrow's demand is today's brand, right? So we know we have to work on that. But I've got a CEO, I've got a CRO, and then the board at the next meeting is asking about how's this quarter going and how is the next.
First of all, you have to understand, why are they making a change and why are they looking for you? And if the answer 99% of the time is that pipeline isn't strong, right? Is that something you can walk in and solve within 1 or 2 quarters? Is there something systematically wrong? Is product market fit wrong? Is the go-to-market motion wrong? Is the value proposition unclear? Is the data in such bad shape you can't tell any of those things? right? All of that will cause a failure trap for the CMO walking in the door. Any one of those could cause that failure trap. And you have to really understand what you're getting yourself into. And just this week, I read a great article on LinkedIn. It was a post on LinkedIn, essentially said, as a CMO, if you're walking in and the data isn't good, you better understand that. And you better have an agreement with the board and the CEO about how they're going to invest to fix that data as you walk in the door, not some come in and build a case and improve it, because data is the lifeblood of marketing. And that will be one of your for sure points of failure, is the inability to articulate what is working and what isn't working, and articulate that and convey it back to the CEO and the board in a convincing way quickly. And again, data is another big source of failure, and lack of understanding of just the position and the strength of the data and how much that's going to empower you and help you as a CMO.
And when you talk about data, there's data for everything nowadays.
Yeah.
What's the most important data as a CMO that when you're reporting to the board, you're holding your own team accountable, you're talking to sales about how you're attributing marketing success to their success? What's the data that you think is the most important that CMOs should be tracking?
Let's go back and start with that due diligence and the understanding of that data coming in. Obviously, every CMO is going to really care a lot about pipeline, right? Pipeline for sure. And we should. It should be our primary metric. But again, going back to that due diligence, right? Understanding the health of the ability to understand pipeline, right? How well is Salesforce working? Are there any attribution tools? What does that data tell you? How well does the sales team manage their hygiene, so that you as a marketing leader can actually understand what is contributing to pipeline and what pipeline actually looks like, versus managing their key wins in a secret spreadsheet the CRO keeps and reports out every week, right? Like those things happen. But I would say back in that due diligence phase, it isn't just about that. You absolutely want to understand product NPS. You want to understand where the company stands on recurring revenue and the causes for churn. Is it product related? Is it support related? So that leads you to also wanting to understand very much what's happening with CSAT and transactional NPS in the support level. You can market the heck out of something, but if they have a customer comes in, has a terrible experience, and they're falling out the bottom and churning just as fast as you're marketing it, you still look like you're not existing, because you look like you acquired the wrong customers, right? Your ROI is never going to be there because the money is falling right out the bottom of the funnel. And then the last one that's really super important to understand is employee NPS. You could be inheriting a team that is, just either demoralized by how bad the pipeline was, how hard it was to get things done. Maybe the previous CMO and CRO had a loggerheads relationship, and so marketing doesn't feel valued. Maybe they are all too junior and there's no training and the salaries are terrible. Like you don't know that. So all of this is part of that due diligence, because any one of those coming in could crater your ability to execute almost immediately.
Absolutely. Something you said about a minute ago that I want to dig into a little bit more. You started talking about the NPS score. You started talking about CSAT scores, like the whole customer experience.
Yep.
So there are surveys that have been out for a long time that percent of marketers feel that the customer experience is the greatest differentiator, long-term sustainable differentiator that the company has. In SaaS, the minute we think we have a product feature that's going to take us into the future, it's copied, right? It's not sustainable. Selling off product, that's one of the legs, the pillars that we have to stand on. Yet 60% of marketers don't feel like they have the customer service organization in order to create that competitive advantage.
There's a fabulous book called Effortless Experience, and it's written by one of the same people that wrote Challenger Sale, actually. So it's like a very smart go-to-market person. And if you read this book and you start to understand the impact of something you mentioned earlier, which is this quarter's brand is next quarter's demand, this quarter's terrible CSAT scores and NPS equals your incredibly negative dark funnel, which equals this quarter's brand not being next quarter's demand. And so this is why understanding things like NPS and transactional NPS are super important to a CMO coming in the door, because you have to know what you're working with, right? If you got a massively negative reputation out in a private Facebook group where all your customers are talking with each other, or in a round table where they're involved and you're not in it, that can and will bite you. And a lot of that is very hard for a CMO in their original year of service to overcome, because it is a 6-year problem. Every terrible brand experience has a 6-year repercussion, not a 2-quarter repercussion. And so there's this expectation of the board that you're going to come in with some new messaging and positioning and you're going to solve that. You're not going to solve that. That is a fundamental flaw of the company's business go to market. And it doesn't mean you shouldn't take that job. It just means you got to go in eyes wide open with an agreement with the board and the CEO of what the 3-year plan is and how long it's going to take you to help fix some of those things, and with the understanding of what's going to be happening in the customer success organization to improve those scores, or in the product. No company is perfect. No product is perfect. No success motion is perfect, right? But if you have terrible product NPS and terrible transactional NPS, doesn't matter if the market's growing like crazy, you're never going to be able to capture your fair share of that market. And that could be a not good place for you to make the relative investment of your precious time as a CMO. So these are just all the things you need to think about as you're getting ready to take on this role and thinking about, will you fail or not fail?
And so what you're doing is you're saying, I'm expanding quite a bit the traditional role of CMO, right? Because the CMO's traditional role in customer support, customer experience, right? That was a different department, right? The employee NPS score, right? I had on the podcast the CRO of the year last year and his CMO. They attributed 50% of their success to their company culture.
Culture beats strategy. There's a reason why there's so much discussion about culture, right? Because culture will make or break a team, and culture will make or break a company. So I get that. And I think you can understand culture. And employee NPS isn't just about culture. It's about all the other intangibles, but the culture signals the acceptance of a terrible travel policy where you're sitting in the back of the bus flying red eyes to save money, or taking 3 stops when you should have been flying a nonstop, but it was like more expensive. Like that kills employee morale, right? Pay equity, that will kill employee morale. Micromanagement, that will kill employee morale. And all of those things are culture from the top.
So I want to take a little bit of a turn here. I want
Okay.
to talk about the relationship between the CMO and the CRO.
Oh yeah, everybody loves this one, right?
Yes,
I need more leads. Sales does a terrible job at following the leads. Like, which argument is it today, right? Like, ask your question.
So the question is, that's the traditional and has been the misalignment between these two positions, and fundamentally different goals. And so therefore, there has to be one go-to-market motion, which means that's why there's a trend. A lot of CROs are sales, right? They should be chief sales officers.
We
But
are.
there is a growing trend of there has to be a revenue leader, right? So a true CRO would actually be looking at all revenue functions in the company, right?
Well, but
So
there's very few true CROs. You might reorganize around that, but just putting somebody who knows sales and calling them a CRO does not make them a revenue leader. It just makes them a glorified sales leader. Can you say I'm a little negative about that position? I'm not saying that you can't have a revenue leader, but as a CMO, CMOs isn't just about pipeline and revenue. It is about the brand reputation of the company, the social impact of the company, every part of the end-to-end company experience the CMO has to look after. I think the big problem is what's happened is that the CMO has become the marketing officer, not market officer. And that what that means is it's turned into CMO equals pipeline and brand equals preparation for pipeline, versus brand being about goodwill and value of the company all up. And I don't really believe in a CMO reporting to a glorified sales leader. I don't believe in that. You can call it a president, you can call it a CRO, what you want. I think that the CEO owns that. The CEO owns go to market and CEO owns the revenue. On the other hand, I am a strong believer in the CMO and the CRO being hand in glove. And what I mean by that is when you walk in the board meeting, there should not be a piece of paper width between you. The board should not be able to divide you. You should be not talking attribution at the board level. You shouldn't be discussing, we didn't hit our number because those sales guys didn't enter their pipeline, and so we overspent on this versus that. Absolutely, those could be the reasons, but you better be lined up with that CRO to go in and say, here's what we've learned, here's what we're going to do better. And it should be a collaborative discussion about revenue and pipeline. And of course, there's other topics that you both have. And as a CMO, I've got broader ranging topics than just pipeline, but pipeline is clearly very important and bookings are very important, but you better be lined up. The minute there's a crack between this and the CRO, the board is sharks in the water and they will go after that. And so you can't let those cracks show at the board level and really in front of your CEO. Like if you're each of you complaining about each other in front of the CEO, that's just a recipe to failure as well.
Yeah, there's the pre-meetings. There should be
Absolutely.
one go-to-market plan. There's one plan in front of the CEO. There's one plan in front of the board.
And the one plans doesn't just start with this quarter. It starts with what is the 3-year plan? What markets do we think we can win in? What ICPs do we think we can win in? That has to be agreed to and aligned. And then when you're talking about resource planning for the year, I don't care where the BDR team sits, can sit in sales or marketing. It doesn't matter. I sometimes think BDRs would do better in marketing because we tend to be more structured, and that's a super structured operational team, but it doesn't matter. But when you think about like investments for the year, what money are you going to put in direct response? What money you're going to put in BDRs? What money you're going to put in sales coverage? That's a model that the CMO and the CRO, or the CMO and the head of sales, should be working on together, because it's all a balloon squeeze on what bets do we have about what part of our revenue engine is going to perform in what ways. And so that's a plan that should be, again, incredibly unified. Anytime I see a CFO off planning the revenue targets and the headcount targets for sales and BDRs and marketing isn't in the room, that's an org that you can guarantee that CMO does not have the right seat at the table and they should be out.
Absolutely. Tell me, because I want to have enough time to get over a couple of more things that you wanted to talk about in terms of this. Talk to me about the brand, right? And it's a huge part of the responsibility of the CMO. A lot of CEOs, they think a lot of CMOs come in and the brand means the style guide, right? It means the color. It means the logo develop. Talk to me about what is the importance of the brand in the role that the CMO has in fostering, promoting that brand.
Yeah. Any good CMO or any good brand manager or anybody who is a marketer worth their salt knows that the brand is not the creative identity. It's just not the logo guide, right? The brand is the feeling that you evoke in your customers. It's what the belief they have in what your company can do, and your belief in your ability to execute and lead and grow and solve their mission. Like, it's the competences in the company, the confidence that you are the right provider, the confidence if I work with you, I'm going to get the right ROI, the confidence if I work with you, I'm going to be successful. It's those confidences you're creating in the market. But it's also the confidences in this is the right solution and the right time to go after that you're creating in the market long before that company is in market. So when they get in market, they think of you. And they come to you and you're the obvious place they go to say, what should my RFP look like? Let me go ask what that company says. And they grab your RFP checklist and your writing guide and they think it's a Bible because you said it, because you're credible. That's what brand is, right? It's not your style guide. And, when my team talks about brand and they always say, if they talk about logos and whatever, I always say, what you mean is the creative identity. And I actually really force people to separate those two and use those exact words for the reason you just talked about.
Yeah. It's the kind of thing that in the world of B2B, your brand is all about your relationship, that trust factor, that you're an expert that can help, right? And that help isn't limited to what your product or your tech does. It's that advisor status that like a Gartner talks about, right? That trusted advisor.
Yeah.
And that same B2B CMO that was on before talking about brand, today's brand is tomorrow's demand, talks about actually it impacts the sales process in tremendous ways. Everything you just talked about. It also takes away sales cycles because then the salesperson isn't having to build all the trust themselves. They're not having to establish themselves as a trusted advisor, somebody that should be listened to. No, none of our buyers want to be sold to. They want to be advised. They want to be helped. They want to be supported.
They want to go on a curated journey and they want you to believe that you can take them on that. And also they want to go on that journey without ever talking to you for the first 70% of it. So brand plays a real important aspect there to get yourself into the consideration set in the conversation during that 70% of their buying journey they're doing without ever being on the phone with you.
And it's getting worse. Gartner's putting it up as 82%, the self-service buyer's process, right?
I believe it. And I don't see that shifting back towards a more traditional sales model. I see it shifting the opposite direction to the point where I'm trying to bring as many click to buy, click to experience type experiences into our products now, because as we shift more towards post millennial buyers, that's their expectations. I want to be able to chat. I want to be able to experience without talking to you. My kids, my 20 somethings, they would never call. They would never call. If they had to call, they would never buy anything. Yes, they don't want to talk to us. They want to experience it and understand it and do their work and immerse themselves in it, even without talking to us.
If there was one bit of advice that you wanted to leave the audience with today, you're like, I'm a marketing leader, I'm a head of marketing with VP of marketing, I'm CMO, I run marketing in business. What is your advice for them? What's the one thing that you would say, here's what you really want to make sure that you're going to do?
I think let's go back to the thing about picking the right job, right? I have stumbled on this. I picked a real stinker at one point in my career about 8 years ago. It was bad. And I stuck with it for almost 6 months because I have that go team mentality, and it's not them, it's me. It must be me. I want to figure it out and fix it and fix them. Terrible mistake. I think the key thing is to really understand. I don't care if you're in your 30s or your 50s like me, your time is the most precious commodity you have to invest in growing your career, but also growing your wealth and growing your impact. And so that picking the right culture, the right executive team, the right product fit, all of those things is super, super critical. There's a great blog. Carol Dietrich writes a great blog, and she's blogged about this topic. She's got some good things in there about this idea of your time is your number one investment. And so for me, I take that super seriously. I'm in the last 10 years of my career. I say that like maybe less. I don't know. I always want to retire before I'm 60, but every day is a choice about the investment of your time. And so if you're in a situation where you don't have that great support, you're fighting every day against the CRI, there is no brand investment, and you're just treading water on lead gen, get out and go find the next thing. And I know the market still feels shaky. The next thing is out there.
So here's my final question for you. Been a B2B CMO 4 different times. What are you most proud of in your career that you've been able to accomplish?
So I have a daughter who is in her late 20s, and I look at her and think she's going to be all the things that I maybe didn't have confidence to be in my 20s and 30s. And then I think about her and her mentors and want to feel like I've led that same kind of mentor relationship with the people that I have brought up through their careers and have worked with in their careers. So probably the most proud thing is I have many people who work for me who bounce back multiple jobs and who've grown their careers from IC level up to VP level. And I love that. And when I've worked with them and grown with them or taken them with me on 2 or 3 companies and feeling out they're this amazing executive getting ready to go be a CMO themselves. I love that. I love having that impact on people's lives and that ability to help them grow, coach them. Some people on my staff jokingly call it the Wendy White School of Marketing. I got a call yesterday. Okay, I went to the Wendy White School of Marketing. Here's the thing I did. And I am proud of them, right? Because what you're trying to teach them to do is have the confidence in themselves to be both a technical and functional expert, but also be a seat at the table executive. And I'm really proud about those things.
I know there's going to be people that have additional questions. And would it be appropriate if we made sure that we had published your link to your LinkedIn profile?
Absolutely. Yes, for sure. And people can reach out to me. My work email is wendy.white@daxko, daxko.com. Love to hear from people.
Fantastic. Wendy, thank you so much for coming on and sharing. What an important topic, right? It's really a topic around the relevance of the CMO role and how do we make sure that's an important seat at the table, as you just said. Marketing has not always had that seat at the table, and we need to have that and we need to earn that. So thank you for everything today.